Well, let's turn to Hosea chapter number 1 tonight. Hosea chapter number 1, and we're going to be taking a look at the Old Testament prophet of God by the name of Hosea. Hosea is an extremely interesting character. His ministry was one of the more unique ministries of all the Old Testament prophets. He was led by God to marry a woman of poor character and reputation. His home life was a living message that illustrated the relationship of God's people to their Lord. In fact, there's some of these verses we're going to read, you're going to say, is he talking about her? Is he talking about Israel? Well, yes. talking both is what he's doing. It's pictured there. Then the ministry of Hosea is especially appreciated when contrasted to that of one of his contemporaries. That is the prophet Amos, who we will look at next. Both of these men were prophets who were involved with the northern 10 tribes of Israel. They lived and ministered at a time when the nation was prospering from a material standpoint. The nation was strong militarily and economically. Both prophets dealt with the people's sin, but they had a different approach. Amos lambasted their sin with strong words of denunciation and condemnation. He emphasized that they had broken God's laws and were justly bringing condemnation to themselves. Hosea preached the same message, but with a tone that spoke of grace and love. Hosea condemned their sin from the position that they were the people whom God had sought out for His own and had bestowed His love on them. That's a good way to approach it, isn't it? You know that God sought you out. God loves you. He loved you and brought you to Himself. He told them how they were being unfaithful and rejecting God's love to their own hurt. He also told them that God still loved them and was ready to take them back into His bosom if they would just put aside their sin and repent, return to Him. So we might say that Amos was a man of the law. Hosea was a man of grace. Let's begin with verse number 1 here. We see the background of the man Hosea mentioned in verse number 1. The word of the Lord came unto Hosea, the son of BEERI, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the last days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. And of course, Hosea's name means Jehovah is salvation. And he was, we don't know anything about his dad other than his dad's name, son of BEERI. Hosea ministered during the days when of these kings that were mentioned here, but Jeroboam II was the king of Israel at the time of this writing. And Hosea was disturbed about the spiritual condition of the people and how they began to act. He knew that they could not continue to prosper while being unfaithful to God. And Hosea's place among the prophets of God is well established. He is quoted more often than any other minor prophet. Now, I didn't know that, but quoted more often than any other minor prophet. He is considered the first prophet of grace, and he has been called the prophet of a sorrowful heart. Let's take a look at how God used him here. We see the marriage of Hosea and Gomer mentioned in chapter number 1 and verse number 2. It says, the beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land that committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son. Now, God directed here Hosea to take the wife of whoredoms. It's conceivable that Hosea knew Gomer as an attractive young woman, but of ill repute, poor character. Nevertheless, God directed Hosea in such a way that he knew it was the will of God for him to marry her. God was trying to teach him about Israel in in this marriage. This marriage caused many to question Hosea. He was criticized and became the object of many cruel jokes. And this took great faith on Hosea's part to just stick with it and do what he knew that God told him to do. And a lot of times that's what you got to do. You got to stick with it. And hey, this is what God has led me to do. This is what I'm going to do. So Hosea married Gomer, and children were born. Again, we see there in verse number 3, the latter part, she conceived, bare him a son. Verse 4 says, and the Lord said unto him, call his name JEZREEL, for yet a little while I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. And it shall come to pass at that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Now, the first child was a son and was named Jezreel. Jezreel is the place where Jehu slew the infamous Jezebel. Remember that he comes up there and has one of the eunuchs throw her down, and she just spattered. She got killed, and there, and all who remained of Ahab's family were also slain in Jezreel. The name Jezreel symbolized the fate that awaited those who defied God. Let me give you the passages from where that what I just mentioned there. 2 Kings 9. We're not going to turn there. 2 Kings 9, verse 30 and 33, where throw her down, and she was thrown down, spattered, and the rest of the family in chapter 10, verse number 11, all of the rest of Ahab's family was killed there. So the name Jezreel symbolized the fate that awaited those who defied God. And the valley of Jezreel has been the site of many bloody battles, and it will be the site again of the Battle of Armageddon. That's the valley of Jezreel. Now we see the second child was born to Gomer in verse number 6 and verse number 7. It says, and she conceived again and bare a daughter. And God said unto him, call her name Laruhamah, and for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. That name means not having obtained mercy. Not having obtained mercy is what it means. We see that this girl, she was could also picture her being unpitied and unloved, one who never knew a father's love. Now the name symbolized the time when Israel would no more be pitied by God and would be given over to her enemies. That's what God does. He will give you over to your enemies. You don't follow him. And we ought to be praying for our nation, because it could happen to our nation. I say, oh no, not the great United States of America. Don't think that America's that great. Okay, it is a great nation, but not greater than God. And God's not going to put up with some of the antics that appear to be going on at times in our land. Now we see a third child was born to Gomer in verse number 8 and 9. Now when she had weaned Laruhamah, she conceived and bare a son. Then said God, call his name Loamah, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. And Loamah means not my people. The name symbolized the exile of God's people from the land. He cast them off. Be cast off, to not my people. Cast them off. Yes, they're still his people, but he treated them as if they weren't. Now, we see the sadness of Hosea's situation and the depth of his love shown in chapter number 2. Let's go ahead and finish reading out this chapter, though, here. Verse 10. He says here, "Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God." I mean, they were treated as outcasts, but they were still really were God's people. "Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together, and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel." And I believe that's pointing to the end time, to the battle of Armageddon, that battle that is so great. Now, in chapter number 2, we see the sadness of Hosea's situation and the depth of his love is shown. Chapter number 2, verse number 1, we see Jezreel was given a message for his brother and sister. It's quite obvious that he's talking to Jezreel when he says, "Say unto your brethren, Amma, and to your sisters, Ruhamah, plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife, neither am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breasts." And so we see here that the name was changed from Loruhamah to Loami. Loami was now Ami, which means my people. Loruhamah is now Ruhamah, which pitied, loved, knowing a father's love. And so he's changing the name. The children were asked to plead with their mother, who had left Hosea at this time, and we see that in verses 2 through 5. And he told them to plead. She'd gone back to her whoredoms and her adulteries. And in verse 3, "Let's not strip her naked and set her as in the day that she was born, and make her as a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst." She was asked to put away her whoredoms and her evil ways there in verse number 2. And if she continued as she would be stripped of all benefits of being Hosea's wife. Is what he's getting at there in verse number 3. She would be put out as she came in. She came in with nothing. She's going to be put out with nothing. Her children would not be cared for by Hosea. Look at verse number 4 and 5. "And I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. For their mother hath played the harlot, she hath conceived them, she that conceived them hath done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers, that give me my bread and my water and my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink." So the children that they had, the 3 children, were children of whoredoms. Gomer had played the harlot while married to Hosea. And we see the depths of Gomer's fall into sin was prophesied. Look at verse number 6. "Therefore will I hedge up thy way with thorns, and make a wall, and she shall not find her paths. And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. And she shall seek them, but she shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now." So she's would be rejected by her lovers. She would determine to return to Hosea, and she would have to suffer for a time. Look at verse number. Let's go ahead and read down verse number 8. "For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal." Now this, I think he's talking about Israel here. Verse 9, "Therefore will I return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. And now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand. I will cause her all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. And I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, whereof she had said, These are my rewards that my lovers have given me, and I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. And I will visit upon her the days of Balaam, wherein she burned incense to them. She decked herself with earrings and her jewels, and she went after her lovers and forgat me, saith the Lord. So it's very, very obvious that he's talking there about Israel, and so the Gomer is picturing that. We see that the return of her first estate was prophesied, and there in verse number 14 and 15, and her being who? Well, I think it's Israel. So he's still, I think the theme is still Israel, but it's pictured in Gomer. Okay, so the death of Gomer's fall into sin was really a prophecy here. And look at the return of her first estate was prophesied there in verse number 14 and 15. Look at verse 14. Therefore, behold, I will lure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably unto her. And I will give her vineyards from thence, in the valley of Achor, for a door of hope, and she shall sing there as in the days of her youth, and as in the day when she came up out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be at that day, saith the Lord, that thou shalt call me Ishi, and that shalt call me no more Baalah. That the first one is my husband, and no more my Lord. It'd be looking back at the right relationship with the Lord. There would be a change from that original relationship. In the past, she had called Hosea Baali, which is my Lord, and in the new relationship, she would be called Ishi, which means my husband. And the same thing is true for the people of God. The new relationship would be a permanent one of love and peace. I'm not going to take time to read verses 17 through 23, but you will see that in there. Now we want to move to, we're not going to do the whole book of Hosea. I'm just hitting some highlights here to give you a picture of Hosea's ministry. And Hosea purchased Gomer out of her whoredoms, according to chapter 3 and verse number 1. Then said the Lord unto me, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. So he was led of the Lord to seek her out. He found her being auctioned off as a slave at a public auction. Look at verse 2. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for an omer of barley, and then half an omer of barley. You talking about hitting rock bottom? She hit rock bottom, didn't she? She just did. Hosea paid the price for her redemption. He put her on a period of probation, there in verse number 3. And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days, and thou shalt not flay the harlot. Thou shalt not be for another man, so will I also be for thee. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without a teraphim. So again, it's picturing how the Lord was going to deal with Israel. She was going to live under discipline. She was without the status of a wife or a mother at this point. And the time would come when she would enjoy all the benefits of being Hosea's wife again, according to verse 5. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God, David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Yeah, that's what Gomer was going to do, and that's what Israel was going to do. Okay, it's all pictured there. So the story of Hosea and Gomer is symbolic of the relationship of God and Israel. Hosea learned the meaning of the suffering love of God for a sinful people. Aren't you amazed sometimes, how sinful we can be, and God still love us. God's still good to us. You know, he realized God is love. I really believe that. Hosea realized God's love. And the major thrust of Hosea's ministry, as he pointed out 3 major misdeeds as evidence of Israel's unfaithfulness to God. Number 1, he pointed out the degeneration of worship. Look down chapter 4, verse 6. It says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. Thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children." They had no concept of the spiritual worship of God. They had sought the irrational, and it ended up with Baal worship. He also pointed out the ultimate degeneration of their national policy. Look at chapter 7 and verse 10 and 11. Chapter 7, verse 10 and 11 says, "And the pride of Israel testifieth to his face, and they do not return to the Lord their God, nor seek him for all of this. Ephraim," which is another name for the northern 10 tribes. It's like the southern tribes being called Judah, northern tribes were at times called Ephraim. Okay, Ephraim, who is like a silly dove without heart, they call to Egypt, they go to Assyria. And that's what they did. You know, they would, rather than seeking help of the Lord, they would seek Assyria, they would seek Egypt, and that was not good for them. And they had a degeneration of their national policy. The Lord was supposed to be the one that they looked to. He also pointed out the degeneration of their morals, and then the things of major importance to be learned from Hosea's message is that their religion really needed to be inward and spiritual. All that they had was just an outward, they go through the motions of their religion. Kind of like Isaiah chapter 1. You know, Isaiah chapter 1, Isaiah talked about, they were just going, it didn't mean anything from the heart. It was all outward. It was all just from what they had learned. God was not in it. They were not in it. You know, it was just going through the motions of religion when they needed to be changed inwardly and spiritually. The God of right is the God of all suffering love. I'm glad God is long-suffering, aren't you? And in this fact, the recurring struggle between justice and mercy is mirrored. Sin is against the love of God. When we sin against God's love. And that's what the picture here in Hosea is. And the relationship between God and his people is an intimate one. Love restores broken fellowship. So that's Hosea, okay? Let me encourage you to read the whole book and go through and absorb that. Next week, Lord willing, we're going to look at his contemporary. We'll be looking at Amos, but that's our Bible study for this evening. Let's set that aside. We'll pull back out our prayer list, pray for the needs, and we'll be dismissed with this prayer.